With you. We're actually going to push the college football fix back just a segment, and we are going to talk with a friend of the program, Dr. Ryves Moore, who is a sports medicine specialist, orthopedic surgeon with Specialty Orthopedic Group. They've got locations in a bunch of places in North Mississippi, including Oxford and Tupelo and Starkville. And I'll set our conversation up like this. If you are a college baseball fan, there are two words that you hate more than any other words these days. And those two words are Tommy John. It happened again this weekend. We found out that Ole Miss projected starting pitcher Xavier Rivas is going to miss this season with an elbow injury, a UCL tear, Tommy John surgery, and rehab on the way. This is not new. It feels like it's become when, not if, with a lot of pitchers. Ole Miss has had their share of pitching injuries. Mississippi State has had them. Southern Miss has had them, though I don't think they've been quite as prominent. College baseball programs all over the country are dealing with this. So we welcome on the Farm Bureau guest line Dr. Ryves Moore, who specializes in UCL repair. Dr. Moore, thank you for a few minutes of your time this afternoon. Am I crazy? I know we've talked about this a little bit. It feels like UCL injuries resulting in Tommy John surgery are becoming more and more frequent. Are they actually becoming more frequent, or are we just talking about them more?
I think they're probably both, Richard. I think they're becoming more frequent, and we're certainly talking about them more due to them being more frequent, but also there's just some more media attention that gets drawn to them, and so therefore it's in front of us more often. So I just think it's a little bit of both, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know that there's a simple answer to this question, but why is this such a frequent injury? It's primarily in pitchers, though occasionally you'll have position players that'll deal with it. Occasionally you'll have other sports, but primarily this is a baseball injury that pitchers are dealing with. What is the root cause? Why are we having so many elbow injuries?
I think it's really multifactorial. I don't think you can put your finger on one specific thing and shoot a magic bullet at it and solve all the UCL issues that we face today in our throwing athletes. I think it really kind of boils down to three different things in some form or fashion, and it's usually a combination of those. And we kind of separate them out as one is sports, what we term as sports specialization, okay, where kids at a young age are basically playing baseball all year round. They're not really taking any time off. And I've talked to people in the office daily where even kids as young as 8, 9, 10 years old are even subspecializing as a pitcher at that age, where they don't hit, they don't play in the field, and all they are doing is pitching starting at a very young age. I think that is a recipe for injury in the future, and that's kind of the overuse aspect of this. I think secondly is a lot of these kids don't have access to premier instruction, and a lot of them have bad mechanics, and over time that catches up to people. And I think that's a part of it. And then thirdly, I think, is that there's not a lot of education out there in terms of proper arm care, how to take care of your arm, how to recover, how to give it appropriate rest, how to strengthen the muscles that are involved in the throwing cycle to the point that it can be protective of UCL injuries. So I think it's a multifactorial thing that you just can't pinpoint one, and it's usually one or if not all three of those combined leading to these injuries.
All right, so if we let kids play multiple sports, we stop throwing 12-year-old curveballs and we rest a little bit, does that mean UCL injuries go away?
I don't think you're going to completely wipe them out.
Okay.
I wish that would be the case. I think they've been going on for a long time, and I think they're more common than they used to be, at least from the lens that we see baseball injuries these days, particularly UCL injuries. But, back in the olden days, back in the 70s and 80s, before we really kind of understood UCL injuries, people would either just continue to play hurt, and we just didn't really have a great answer for it, or it was a season or a career-ending issue where they just couldn't throw anymore, and they just hung the spikes up.
Ryves, let me ask you this. Is there a scenario, and maybe not even a scenario, is there a finite number of bullets in the gun? And I don't know if that's the exact correct analogy, and I know the answer is not the same for everybody. But if little Johnny starts pitching when he's 8 years old and he's fortunate to pitch in high school and college, is the fact that, like, as his elbow is constructed by God, he has so many pitches in that arm. And then once those are gone, there's going to have to be some reconstruction. Is that a crazy theory?
I don't think it's crazy. I think there's some truth to that. I don't know how you study that and publish that in terms of a validated research study.
No medical journals are publishing that
theory.
Yeah,
I don't think that's out there, and we certainly hadn't studied. I hadn't seen any studies on it, but I do think there's some truth to that. Everybody's genetic makeup is different. The stress level that a person can take for this particular issue varies from person to person. There are some adaptive changes that occur with the shoulder and the arm as that happens as kids develop, that you have to have in order to be an elite thrower, and you've got to be able to find kind of the balance between that. But over time, these kids are starting younger and younger, and I think that's one reason we're starting to see these injuries earlier and earlier. And the most common age group that we see these tears in are the 15 to 19-year-old range. That's been well documented in some studies we have out, and that correlates to your high school kids.
Visiting with Dr. Ryves Moore, he is an orthopedic surgeon and focuses on UCL reconstruction, studied under Dr. James Andrews at the Andrews Sports Medicine Institute, among other places, Campbell Clinic and others. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so two-part. One, is it less of a big deal? Like it's easy to say that, okay, guy blows out his elbow and go, it's not a big deal. He'll come back better than he was, because we've seen that over and over. Is this a less concerning injury than it once was because of the prognosis on the backside? That's part one of the question. And part two, what about the comeback time? Has it shortened at all? Is this still a 12 to 18-month recovery time, or are there ways to do it faster?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are major league teams. If you look at the first-round draft picks the last several years, you look at the pitchers specifically, a fair amount of those, I don't have the percentage in front of me, but a fair amount of them have already had Tommy John surgery, whether that's a repair or reconstruction or a hybrid, which we can touch on in a minute. And so I think it appears that Major League Baseball teams and even college teams that have had, have pitchers that have scholarship offers in high school that have already had the surgery, they are not scared of a kid that has already had the surgery. And to your point, a lot of them come back and throw harder, and they feel better. Sometimes that can take 8 or 9 months. Sometimes that takes 12 to 18 months, depending on what their injury, what their surgery was. Okay. And so the first answer to your first question is, I think with it being more and more common and we're getting better techniques of how to treat it, I think there's less apprehension by the college and the pro teams to continue to sign these players that have already had it because of the techniques that have been developed in the last 15, 20, 25 years to be able to get them back to playing college and pro ball.
All right, so hey, a 30-second answer on hybrid repair. I've heard a little bit about that, and I know it's not enough time, but we're up against a hard break. So in 30 seconds, give us the Reader's Digest version of the hybrid repair.
Yeah, Yeah, so there's basically three kinds of surgeries for UCL injuries right now. One being the gold standard classic UCL reconstruction, where you take a tendon graft and you make a new ligament. And then the two newer techniques, which is a UCL repair, which you can really only do for certain types of tears, and add an internal brace, which is a collagen-coated fiber tape or heavy suture. That rehab timeline is usually about 6 months. Gold standard classic UCL reconstruction is about 12 to 18 months. Hybrid reconstruction is a hybrid of that. You're using a tendon graft, but you're also adding this collagen-coated fiber tape and also repairing the ligament. And that rehab timeline can vary anywhere between 8 to 12 months, depending on how they recover and progress through a throwing progression program.